So often we have to ask ourselves as thinkers, ideators, what am I willing to commit to? What kind of role do I want to play uh, in the realization of this idea, as well as what roles can others play that will strengthen it, will take up aspects of the working model that maybe I'm not suited for, or we're
Yeah.
not suited for, or maybe just don't have the patience for, or we have to put attention elsewhere, like on our families.
So, okay, so what we've been talking about so far, and this seems somewhat unique for you than the other three, and who knows how many other people I'll interview, but is the team. For the Bredesen Protocol, this diet, there's a Facebook group. So this author has that very supportive group. He published, he put a picture of the book that he published, and a whole bunch of people congratulated him. So he gets that, but he's not working with them, presumably day to day. I think Aaron seems to be a lot on his own, although he's going to China, but those relationships are more probably purely commercial. Like, here's the prototype I want you to build, and let's talk about budget and parts. And Brian, he has a spiritual community here in Ojai and other places, but when he was traveling, at least, he was just going into a town where he didn't really know anybody and was talking about stuff that's really out there. So obviously having a group of people all with different hats and all with different skills and all bringing enthusiasm is great. What are some of the challenges and possibly ways to overcome them if you have a team where no one's getting paid, everyone may have a different vision of what the outcome they want is, and there may be different personalities and hierarchies. And what is your experience, as much as you can say about that?
Yeah, that kind of less formal organizational arrangement, that kind of less formal organizational arrangement is very challenging. You and I, we've collaborated in the past in that kind of way. So it requires a really deep sense of mission, I think, for the group. You have to really believe in the idea, but also its ability to actually be implemented well, to remain dedicated to it, to seeing it come through. Also, just kind of the generosity of keeping things moving, of keeping momentum, of seeing team members who take initiative because they see the way forward. That provides a lot of kind of inspiration to a group that may otherwise disband if it feels like they're just diffusing. I'm
Yeah.
part of those kind of collaborations too. I a few years ago I did a promotional video for a new festival in Denver. It was an arts and music festival. It was going to be a big 2-day festival, but it never happened. It was this remote collaboratory project with a team of maybe 15 people, which we worked together for a number of weeks. I could just feel the group, the infrastructure, the organization just crumbling under the weight of not being able to really formalize relations in the way that you've suggested and the way you're asking me about. So I've definitely experienced that in different aspects of it in collaboratory groups.
Yeah.
Uh, so
I lost you again. You said you've felt that in different collaboratory groups.
yeah, I've definitely felt groups rise up to the occasion, bind together, uh, in not necessarily dependent on the resources, right? Sometimes there are campaigns, grassroots campaigns, or like your friend who's doing the work on health and dementia. Sometimes sometimes things can galvanize. The idea can galvanize and get through the window to realize it. It depends on resources, and I guess what I mean is, like, it doesn't have to be money, it doesn't have to be contractual resources, but the other resources have to then kind of fill in or be more powerful, right?
Right. Well, it's interesting because for him in terms of dementia and Brian in terms of his guru and spiritual path, it's very scientific. If you show people examples of success with whatever you're presenting, whether it's a dietary approach or a spiritual path, and it works for enough people, then you say, oh, okay, I want that too. But the challenge, I think, for you and for Aaron is that you're competing with other things. People who might be interested have the same objectives, but there are a lot of different options as to what might, I guess in spirituality too, what might work. Um, and it's like the reason I'm interested in this is because, you know, my background is marketing and sales before speech pathology. And even though I had the skills for it, the energy that it brought out in me wasn't a peaceful energy. Like to the noise of social media and all that and saying, look at me, look at me. It's like, I don't want to do that. I want to empower other people. Then it's a little cleaner for me. But if I had as myself or a team, some vision of, well, if this thing happened, it would help the environment or individuals or the ecosystem. I would be drawn through, I guess you could say, love towards that. But then I'd want to make sure that I was balanced in how I did it. Like, for example, I went to a meeting with my son's school, and that's another person I want to interview is the person who started that school. And so they had us all put pieces of paper, I think a green piece of paper in the center, what our values were. Okay, can you still hear me? Yeah. So what our values were, and then an orange set of paper about what projects would fit those values. And so, as you know, you worked with me in the time bank in New York, right? And so I felt like the school should have a time bank. And that would help them with the resources and get kids involved and be run by kids. And I felt every time I brought it up, like I was like trying to like convince a whole room full of people that, look at me, I got the idea. And then finally I said, I'm getting too attached to my approach. So I stopped. And then when someone else brought up the time bank, I felt great. I felt, oh, okay, so it's taken root. But a school, similar to a lot of these other things, is dealing with a lot of different competing focuses and interests and motivations and priorities. And there's not one centralized leader who's going to say, yes, I greenlight that project. We will start a time bank. So, and I'm not going to push it forward anymore because I don't like the energy it brings out in me. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is a way that one can bring something to life outside of the top-down hierarchy, because that works. You know, like if you found a person that wanted to give a bunch of money to any of your projects and said, I'll give you the money, but I'm going to be the boss and I'm going to tell everyone what to do. And if you didn't think they were a jerk and you needed the money, you might say, yeah, okay, as long as we agree to these principles. You might regret it later, I don't know. But like that model, which I guess starts back from the Romans or the cavemen, like that model works. This more democratic, holistic, holacracy, shared thing can easily, as you say, dissolve if there's not something keeping together like money or a charismatic leader. But
there's mission.
Okay.
I had said mission. Yes, charisma can help because people respond to it, right? Charisma is the conveyance of sense of mission and purpose.
Yeah.
So that other people, it takes root in other people, just like when the feeling you felt when the time bank was brought.
Wait, you froze
again. To your career.
You froze again. You said the feeling you felt.
The feeling you felt when the other person in the school meeting brought up your time bank idea.
Right.
Was the reflection of your charisma in that circumstance. Right. So charisma can be powerful because it can communicate, it can allow ideas to be shared and be adopted.
Yeah.
Through charisma. However, it's not enough if the mission is fuzzy or unclear or becomes diluted from other interests or other charisma. That's the funny thing about charisma, is it can come and go. It goes in cycles, right? But mission is perhaps the most powerful resource of all.
A shared mission.
What raises funds?
Okay.
what gets people to the table.
Right. So then the question in my mind is, if there's charisma or mission or an ability to share your enthusiasm such that you pull a team or you create customers or evangelists or whatever, we've seen that happen in really beautiful ways and really horrific ways in history. But it seems often that it comes with a certain attachment, like, and maybe that's just the way it is, but like the world would be a better place if this project, whatever the project is, happened, right? Otherwise, if you didn't have that belief, then would you open your mouth, right? But how does it not
Not
become?
necessarily.
Yeah,
There are so many instances where people open their mouths because they believe that they will be better off rather than the world being better off.
right.
It's a different sensibility, which leads to a different communicability.
Yeah,
Because,
and the typical sales process is you will be better off with my product or service, right? So, but in all cases, and we can go down that road. But I guess what I was thinking about was this idea of attachment, and the reason why I'm interested in attachment is because myself and others I've seen get really attached to an idea, like really attached to, I need this to happen. And then if you need something to happen and there's obstacles, you begin to have resistance. Like I'm saying, like, is there a way to have an idea, an inspiration, and and have it come to fruition without the standard models that we see all the time? Do you get what I'm saying? Or is it too abstract what I'm saying?
oh, sure, it must happen every day.
Right.
The, the models that anyone can point to, the hierarchical model, um, there are holistic ideas being spread successfully every day. There are democratic ideals, grassroots ideals being spread every day. They perhaps work in different forms. They work at different rates. So the adoption or saturation awareness level that they create may not fit into the metrics of the hierarchical model of success.
Yeah.
So we have to learn to look for success. We have to look for fruition in terms of different kinds of dynamics, uh, so that we can understand when our ideas that uh, are, are, are actually being adopted or being heard, as well as we can sense better the shift in the wind or the direction, cultural trends, larger cultural trends, to see if we're actually having influence. So certainly in the last campaign election, we saw different models of fundraising side by side. You can see that maybe you have to take money from certain types of organizations like super PACs. Maybe you don't to have to run for office. In terms of energy infrastructure, we're seeing adoption of solar, wind in different kinds of organizational capacities, whether it's the amount of wind farms off the coast of the European Union, which is now providing, I think, about 40% of energy for the EU, or within the next 10 years, let's say, will be providing even more. Now, that may not be the headline, that, or maybe that's not the mainstream awareness around how those ideas are being implemented. But it depends where you look. It depends how you're looking at um, the spread of these ideas or the strength of these ideas, where they're strong. The hierarchies are always going to point to themselves. So the holarchist kind of has to look everywhere else, though, which means scratching the surface, bringing things up to the surface that may not be so apparent. It requires a whole kind of skill of curiosity. If uh, if you want to see, for instance, how your diet is, how many people are adopting your diet for dementia. Um, I guess Facebook tracking of analytics, things like that, makes it interesting and different now. But these are the kinds of tools that are uh, we can utilize them. I don't know. I'm not great at that kind of thing, but other people are,
Yeah.
and it also helps then when you find people who are looking at results that you're looking at, because then you can talk to them and have more discourse, which helps kind of reinforce your understanding and your sense of what the idea is doing. Where's it popping up?
This is, I mean, it's a fundamental shift, which has just become part of our lives, so maybe we don't appreciate it. But with Facebook, for example, you can very specifically identify people who are interested in the same thing that you're interested in. And if you get enough of those people and crowdsourcing and Kickstarter, you can fund things, or you can just spread an idea. And YouTube and self-publishing on Amazon, all this stuff now, which was not possible 20 years ago, can be used for the power of good. I think we tend to focus so much on the negative aspects of that. But that's very democratizing and empowering.
Well, it's got light and shadow sides to it for sure, right? Because disinformation, this whole battle of information,
Yeah.
uh, sourcing information becomes really, really important, as well as difficult, because there's a lot of noise in the system. There's a lot of feedback being generated. So it's something that takes a lot of cultivation in order to be able to know where to look for good information. I don't mean good or evil. I mean useful information that feels, at least that you can kind of add it into your perspective, verify it.
Yeah. Okay, so how do we wrap up this conversation? We've done really well of not mentioning specifics of anything, which is really great.
Have we covered your items of process, those 6?
Let's see. So the first one was inception, introduction to the idea. And so this is a little hard to talk about with you because I don't really know. If we don't mention the ideas, it's hard to know or really appreciate that moment. But what we did talk about is the cultivation of it like a sprout. So I kind of feel like I covered that one.
Well, yes, but I want to note that that's one good image. It's a useful image in terms of the sprout gardening image, cultivating your garden as an idea. But I thought what you brought up about that in terms of their ideas that can just get out into the world meme-wise, can be adopted by end users who may have totally different purposes than whatever the inspiration was for you. There are lots of other ways to look at how ideas are formed and shared.
Yeah.
We could use lots of different, I like cooking images too. It's a great process to bring your ingredients together.
Yeah.
So ingredients can be a great source of inspiration. And then that process of making them into something more than what they began as, a dish.
Yeah, so I would like to talk with you again after these ideas are public and revisit the inception a little more. The second one was resistance, doubt, and reluctance. And what I'm pointing at there is this idea of, okay, so I have this idea, or someone tells me about this idea, say the dementia diet, and one might say, well, most doctors don't buy into this as a cure or are not aware of it, so I reject it, right? Or this guru is from another culture and you're talking about things that aren't my culture, so I reject it. So, if you have a passion and a vision and let's just say an attachment to an idea coming to fruition, but you have your own internal doubt also, it's almost like a civil war. And that's something I want to explore in the series with people. Um, and again, you spoke about that in the context of a group of supporters who, and also how technology allows us to find outsiders who are on the same page, and that may help us with our own inner resistance. And so in the case of the dementia diet, if there are over 100 examples of people who have done it and it's reverse dementia, oh, okay, so maybe this is a valid thing. Or if I see someone riding one of Aaron's scooters and it looks fun, oh, okay, I'll do that. So we kind of
the way to cut through doubt and resistance is always to connect with serving the need. If there's a need of uh, people to read your book, there's a need of people to hear a story or learn a diet because they will be healthier or be able to make more informed choices, then that's always the reason to move forward. If those,
yes, but you could have the need, but you may not believe that this particular solution is going to address it.
well, but an idea may lead to another idea,
Yeah.
even in nonlinear fashion by association, or one idea may be worked on for many months or a long period of time, which may lead to an idea that totally upends the original inception, but is clearly going to be able to serve the larger need that is driving that inception. So it's still part of that idea. There's evolution in this process.
Yeah. And then the last stage is the outcome, and we touched on that in the context of, one could fall in love with the idea or the process or the solution, but then if you think, well, what would I actually be doing day by day? That may not be an outcome that I would personally like to have. And for those people who are fortunate enough to have a team, in theory, you could outsource all of the, as you said, outsource all of the parts of it that you are not either skilled at or the patience for or the pleasure in, and just focus on the vision itself. And those are great situations often to be in, but not every project lends itself to that.
Well, we do agree in that I also feel we should give away our ideas and get out of the way of our ideas as soon as possible.
Right.
Now, in the case of my documentary series, that is a long, devoted process before I can get out of the way and give away the story. Yeah. Because I'm not going to invite someone over for tea if I don't have any tea. And if I'm growing the tea, I have to grow the tea before I can harvest the tea, before I can invite the person over and serve them the tea in the appropriate manner. So it's this whole process that some ideas demand before we can let them go. So it's knowing yourself, it's knowing your part, it's knowing the need that you're serving.
And it takes a particular kind of person, and you are that, who can...
I'm a particular kind of person.
Particular kind of person. You can say, and it helps when you have other people with you. Like I tend to not work as much with teams. So, and I tend to be like kind of like a flare or a candle. I burn super bright on something, and then I get distracted by family or job obligations or just seeing the novelty wear off. Whereas I think you and others like you can stick with something. And I think the fact that you keep it in a vague formation for so long helps that, right? For me, it gets so crystallized immediately, then the novelty's gone because I know exactly how it's going to work. And then it's just a matter of, well, do I want to spend the next 3 months trying to make it work? Which is why this project is perfect for me, because there's nothing to do. All I do is record people who are doing things and talk to them. And that way I get to do what I do, which is this explosive, like, blah, the enjoyable part. But I do want to figure out if there's a way that I can cultivate what you're doing, which is hold an idea in a vague form, build a group of individuals who are dedicated to the vague goal, and then I
feel like I need to amend, though, your kind of assessment of the way I'm holding this idea, because this documentary series began as an investigation for a 15-minute story for a TV show.
Right.
A very specific, not vague idea.
Right.
When I was told that this story was not appropriate for that venue,
yeah,
I didn't believe it, except that I knew it was actually a bigger story, maybe at least 90 minutes, at least a 90-minute story. That's also a specific thing.
Yeah.
So, and I believe that maybe it's not right for the venue that it was incepted within.
Right.
But the story must be told, because if I don't tell it,
You said the story must be told.
and they're all because if I don't tell it, nobody else will tell it.
Okay.
And there are a lot of stakes behind that which have nothing to do with me. Stakes for other people's careers, other people's lives that they've put into making progress in the issues in the story. But the thing is that as opposed to your kind of vague notion holding theory of inception.
Your word. I just took your word.
Oh, maybe. Oh, so, but to refine it more to the reality of it,
right.
Is actually been this very specific trying to check a specific box for a TV show.
Yeah.
We need a story. We need a 15-minute story for an episode.
Right.
And then letting it adapt to other possibilities. So it's actually been me having to step back and say, okay, that's not the shape it's going to take. What's a better shape? Oh, maybe it can be a feature film. Then meeting with another company who say, well, we don't really see this as a feature film. We see it as a 6-hour series, 6 episodes. Oh, well, how is that going to work? That's going back to the source of the idea, adapting it, seeing how it can actually work in somebody else's need, right?
Right.
And then it's been reiterated since that part of the process too. But
yeah, and you know what that makes me think of? I don't want to. Were you going to say something? I had a thought that I wanted to share.
Go ahead.
What it makes me think of is that in the 1970s or 80s, a guru came from India and introduced transcendental meditation. And if you look, I looked at like a television interview of him, and it was very much, it looked a lot like what Brian Lotman's community and events are like. It's a guru in robes talking with an Indian accent. But now, if you look at the tm.org website, the languaging and even the way it's trained is very much fitting in the Western model. Mm-hmm. They'll talk about things that are spiritual principles, but mainly they're just sticking to the nuts and bolts of it, right? So they morph the way you're being asked to morph your solution or your offering.
If the idea survives these kinds of stages, these morphs,
yeah,
it's very strong.
Yeah,
it's taught me to believe in that idea, its potency overall, that it can come to fruition and serve a big purpose, or serve a deep, meaningful purpose, well beyond whatever my concept of the idea is, but is actually part of something bigger that's trying to voice.
Yeah. Is there's an initial idea, and your tendency, which is not universal because I don't have it, but I appreciate it and might want to adopt it more,